The thirsty land. Imagine a land where the earth has forgotten the taste of water. A vast, golden expanse of silence, broken only by the howling wind that scours the jagged rocks of the Suleiman Mountains. This is Balochistan. It is a place of stark, terrifying beauty, but for the people who live here, it is a landscape defined by a single, crushing absence: thirst. For centuries, the districts of Darabugti, Jal Magsi, and Bolan have existed on the very edge of survival. Here, the sun is not a life-giver, it is a tyrant. Summer temperatures routinely climb past 115 degrees Fahrenheit, baking the ground until it cracks like broken pottery. Rain is a myth, a ghost that appears perhaps once a year, only to vanish into the parched soil before it can be caught. For generations, farmers have looked at the sky and prayed while their wells ran dry and their children walked miles just to find a muddy pool of drinking water. But tragedy lies in geography. Just a few hundred kilometers away, the mighty Indus River roars toward the sea. It is the lifeline of Pakistan, a serpentine beast carrying billions of liters of glacial meltwater from the Himalayas. For decades, this water flowed past the thirsty lips of Balochistan, tantalizingly close, yet impossibly out of reach. The contrast was maddening. On one side, the abundance of the Indus. On the other, the death of the desert. This is the story of how a nation decided to correct that mistake. It is the story of the Kachi Canal, a project of staggering ambition, designed to defy gravity, geography, and politics. It is the story of digging a 300-mile artificial river through the heart of the desert, battling sandstorms, floods, and relentless heat, to bring a green revolution to a dead land. The dream of the Kachi Canal was born out of necessity. By the early 2000s, the water crisis in Balochistan was no longer just a humanitarian issue. It was a threat to national stability. The province, rich in minerals but poor in water, felt abandoned. The decision to build the canal was officially greenlit, with a vision that sounded almost impossible on paper: to tap into the Indus River at the Tansa Barrage in Punjab and carry that water 500 kilometers south, deep into the arid heart of Balochistan. The starting point is the Tansa Barrage. Built decades ago, this massive concrete structure acts as the gatekeeper of the Indus. It is here that the journey begins. Engineers from WAPDA, Water and Power Development Authority, had to design a new head regulator, a massive set of steel gates capable of diverting thousands of cubic feet of water per second from the river's main flow. But diverting the water was the easy part. The challenge was the path. The route of the Kachi Canal had to traverse some of the most hostile terrain on the planet. It had to snake through the sandy plains of southern Punjab, cross the provincial border, and then navigate the unpredictable flood-prone topography of Darabugti. The scale of the Big Dig was biblical. When excavation began, it wasn't just a construction site, it was an invasion. Thousands of bulldozers, excavators, and dump trucks descended on the desert. The plan called for the removal of millions of tons of earth. Every day, the skyline was choked with the dust of excavation. The canal was designed with a massive profile, over 150 feet wide at the top and nearly 23 feet deep. It was wide enough to sail a ship through, yet it was being built in a place where people didn't have enough water to wash their faces. As the excavators carved the trench, engineers faced a critical problem: the thirst of the sand. The soil in this region is sandy and porous. If they simply dug a ditch and filled it with water, the desert would drink it all. The water would seep into the ground and vanish long before it reached Balochistan. The solution was lining. The entire length of the main canal, hundreds of miles of it, had to be paved with concrete. This was not just pouring a sidewalk. It was a feat of industrial choreography. First, the raw earth of the canal bed had to be compacted. Heavy rollers, vibrating with the force of minor earthquakes, rumbled back and forth, turning the loose sand into a floor as hard as rock. Then came the lining. Teams of laborers worked in the blistering heat to lay a protective layer of sand cushion. On top of this, they poured concrete panels 4 to 5 inches thick. But concrete is a fickle material. In the desert, the temperature swings are extreme. The scorching days and cooler nights cause the ground to expand and contract. If the concrete was a single solid sheet, it would crack and shatter within weeks. To prevent this, engineers divided the lining into thousands of individual panels, separated by expansion joints filled with hot bitumen sealant. This allowed the canal to breathe with the heat of the earth. In areas with unstable subsoil, an additional geomembrane layer was placed beneath the concrete, fixed with steel anchors, ensuring that not a single drop would be lost. The logistics of this were a nightmare. Concrete batching plants had to be built in the middle of nowhere. Water for the concrete mix had to be trucked in. And the workers were heroes. They worked in rotating shifts, enduring daytime temperatures that often exceeded 115 degrees Fahrenheit. In the summer months, the machinery would get so hot you couldn't touch the metal with bare hands. A canal of this magnitude cannot simply cut through the land. It must coexist with it. The route of the Kachi Canal crosses natural drainage paths where, during the monsoon, rainwater from the mountains rushes down with the force of a tsunami. Engineers knew this. They designed hundreds of cross-drainage structures, massive concrete culverts and super passages that allowed the natural floodwater to pass under the canal without destroying it. It was a complex, three-dimensional puzzle. The artificial river had to thread the needle through nature's flash flood highways. Along the main route, there are more than 900 different engineering components. Reinforced concrete bridges were built to maintain traffic flow for local communities. Siphons were constructed to pull water under hills, and aqueducts were raised to carry it over valleys. Distribution gates were placed every 6 to 9 miles to control the flow into secondary branches, ensuring that water could be delivered with surgical precision. Everything had to operate in perfect harmony. A single malfunction at a gate or an aqueduct could deprive hundreds of hectares of farmland of their water supply. Survey crews had to recheck elevation with laser leveling instruments every 160 feet to ensure the canal floor stayed perfectly aligned. The longitudinal slope was held within 1 inch per 100 feet, an incredibly tight margin over such a vast distance. After more than 15 years of relentless struggle, delays, and engineering battles, the moment of truth finally arrived. The construction phase ended, and the water testing phase began. At the Taunsa Barrage, the great steel gates were hoisted. The murky, silt-rich water of the Indus began to pour into the concrete channel. It moved slowly at first, pushing a cushion of air ahead of it. Engineers drove alongside the canal in jeeps, their eyes glued to the concrete panels, looking for leaks. They watched the gauges at the siphons. The discharge was gradually increased from 500 to 2,000 and finally to 6,000 cusecs. The water traveled south, crossing the border from Punjab into Balochistan. It filled the empty U shape that had been dry for so many years. In the districts of Dera Bugti and Jalmagsi, the locals gathered on the ridges. These were people who had grown up hearing stories about a river that would come to them. Many had stopped believing, but then they saw it, a glittering ribbon of silver cutting through the brown dust. When the first rush of water flowed through the cracked, dry canal bed, the region erupted in celebration. Locals called it the day the desert came back to life. Wherever the water reached, cheers followed. It wasn't just a flow of water, it was a flow of hope. It was the fulfillment of a dream that generations of farmers had waited their entire lives to witness. Today, if you look at satellite imagery of this region, you see something that shouldn't be there. Amidst the beige and yellow of the desert, there are geometric squares of emerald green. This is the command area of the Kachi Canal. The water is not just flowing, it is working. The project has brought life to tens of thousands of acres of land. Farmers who once subsisted on meager livestock farming or had left due to drought have returned. They are pitching tents, driving stakes, and plowing the first fields of their lives amid the sand and rock. The soil of Balochistan, it turns out, is incredibly fertile. It just needed water to unlock it. The silt from the Indus acts as a natural fertilizer. Now, where there was once only dust and sun, stand wheat fields, vegetable farms, and orchards. But the Kachi Canal is more than an irrigation ditch. It is an economic engine. It has brought the state back into the lives of the people, not with weapons, but with water. It has turned a dead land into a breadbasket. The construction of the Kachi Canal stands as a testament to the stubbornness of hope. It proves that we can redraw the map. We can correct the mistakes of geography. It was late, it was difficult, and it was built in one of the harshest environments on Earth. But for the farmer in Dera Bugti, who watches his first harvest turn golden under the sun, the river of sand was worth every drop of sweat. This is the legacy of the desert engineers, a victory of engineering over emptiness, proving that even in the driest places on Earth, life finds a way, if we are brave enough to dig the path. So, you have learned the story of how they dug billions of tons of sand to bring the Indus to the desert. But this is only half the story. What happens when there is no river nearby? What happens when the only water you have is the salty ocean? Join us in the next episode as we travel to Israel to witness an even greater technological marvel, turning the sea into sweet water.